There are moments in history when the world collapses, but it does so quietly. There are no explosions, no big headlines, just the sound of doors closing, one by one. In the summer of 1940, in the Lithuanian city of Kaunas, a Japanese diplomat named Chiune Sugihara watched those doors close from his office window. Outside the Japanese consulate, hundreds of people stood in silence, men, women, and children. They were Jewish refugees who had escaped Nazi Germany and Poland, believing they had finally outrun death. But now, all of Europe was burning faster than they could run. Borders were sealed shut. Trains were no longer escape routes. They were traps. These people had nowhere left to go. They didn't shout or protest. They simply waited, day after day. Sugihara wasn't a powerful man. He was a middle-ranking diplomat, trained his whole life to follow protocol, represent his country, and most importantly, obey orders. His job was to observe, report, and remain neutral. But how can you remain neutral when human beings are standing outside your door, their lives held in their hands? These refugees desperately needed transit visas, simple pieces of paper that would allow them to pass through Japan to find safety elsewhere. Without them, they would be sent back. And everyone knew what back meant: death. Sugihara sent a formal request to his superiors in Tokyo. The answer came back quickly. No, the refugees did not meet the strict requirements. Japan did not want to cause any trouble. Rules were rules. Sugihara waited. He sent a second request. Again, the answer was a firm no. A third time, he tried. No. Each refusal felt heavier than the one before. Every morning, he looked out his window and saw the same desperate faces. Every night, he noticed there were fewer children in the crowd. And then came the moment that defines a life. Sugihara understood something with absolute clarity. If he followed his orders, he would remain a good, respectable diplomat. But if he followed his conscience, he might lose everything: his career, his reputation, his future. He went home that night and spoke with his wife Yukiko. They talked late into the night, weighing the options, knowing the risks. They both knew the truth. What he was considering wasn't just an act of defiance, it was illegal. But they also knew that legality and morality are not always the same thing. The very next morning, Sugihara sat down at his desk, picked up his pen, and began to write. He started issuing visas, one by one, name by name, each one carefully handwritten. He did this not because he was told to, but because he knew he could not live with himself if he didn't. Outside, the crowd of refugees continued to wait, completely unaware that inside a small, quiet room, a single man with a pen was changing the course of history for them. For nearly a month, Sugihara and his wife worked tirelessly, sometimes for 18 to 20 hours a day. He wrote until his fingers were cramped and sore. Even as he was forced to leave Lithuania by train, he continued writing visas from his window, throwing them out to the desperate people running alongside the tracks. He wrote until the very last second the train pulled away from the station. It's estimated that Chiune Sugihara issued thousands of visas, saving the lives of at least 6,000 people. These Sugihara survivors and their descendants now number in the tens of thousands. When he returned to Japan after the war, he was dismissed from the foreign ministry. He lost his career for his act of disobedience. For years, his story was largely unknown. When asked later in his life why he did it, his answer was simple: they were human beings, and they needed help. I'm glad I had the strength to make the decision to do what I did. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes, the greatest acts of courage don't happen on a battlefield. They happen quietly, at a desk, with a pen, when one person decides to follow their conscience instead of their orders. Imagine being faced with an impossible choice: follow the orders of your government, or follow the dictates of your own conscience and save thousands of lives. This is the story of Chiune Sugihara, a Japanese diplomat stationed in Kaunas, Lithuania, during the summer of 1940, as Nazi Germany expanded its reach. Thousands of Jewish refugees found themselves trapped, desperately seeking a way out. Their only hope was a transit visa through Japan, but the Japanese government had strict rules. Sugihara requested instructions from Tokyo 3 times, and 3 times he was denied permission to issue the visas. He stood at a crossroads. Obeying his superiors meant condemning these people to almost certain death. Defying them meant risking his career, his future, and the safety of his own family. Looking at the crowd of desperate faces gathered outside his consulate, Sugihara made a decision that would change the course of history. He decided to write. For 29 straight days, from dawn until dusk, he and his wife worked tirelessly. His hand ached, his eyes burned from lack of sleep, but he did not stop. Each piece of paper he signed was more than just a document. It was a lifeline, a promise of a future for an entire family. He knew he was breaking every rule, but he also knew the human cost of obedience was far too high. The word spread like wildfire. The crowd outside the consulate swelled, a sea of hope and fear. Parents held their children high, hoping to catch his eye. Sugihara worked methodically, issuing a month's worth of visas every single day. He didn't ask questions or pass judgment. He just wrote. His wife Yukiko stood by his side, massaging his cramped hands and organizing the endless stream of paperwork. They were a team, united by a singular, profound purpose. Even when Tokyo sent stern warnings demanding he stop, he ignored them. The pleas in the eyes of the refugees were louder than any official cable. Finally, the order came. The consulate was to be closed immediately. Sugihara and his family were forced to leave, but even then, he refused to stop. He continued issuing visas from his hotel room. On the day of his departure, at the train station, a crowd of refugees surrounded his carriage. As the train prepared to pull away, Sugihara leaned out the window, still stamping papers and throwing them into the crowd. He signed until the very last moment the train started moving. As it gained speed, he shouted his apologies. "Please forgive me. I cannot write anymore." He threw his official stamp into the crowd, hoping someone could use it to save more lives. It's estimated that Chiune Sugihara saved around 6,000 people with his handwritten visas. These Sugihara survivors and their descendants now number in the tens of thousands. Because one man chose compassion over compliance, entire generations were able to live, to love, and to build new families. When Sugihara returned to Japan, he was dismissed from the foreign service for his insubordination. He lived the rest of his life in quiet obscurity, never seeking recognition for his heroic act. For decades, the world did not know his name. It wasn't until 1985, a year before his death, that he was officially recognized by Israel as righteous among the nations, an honor given to non-Jews who risked their lives to save Jews during the Holocaust. Chiune Sugihara's story is a powerful reminder that one person's courage, one act of defiance against injustice, can ripple through time and save the world for thousands. Imagine this: the war is over, the world is trying to piece itself back together, and Chiune Sugihara, the man who defied an empire to save thousands, returns to Japan. What awaits him? A hero's welcome, a medal of honor? No, what he received was a quiet dismissal from Japan's diplomatic service. There was no explanation, no ceremony, and certainly no recognition for his incredible acts of defiance and compassion. Just silence. The man who once held the power of life and death in his hands now found himself struggling to make ends meet. He sold light bulbs door to door. He worked as a translator. He took any odd job he could find to support his family. He lived a modest, almost anonymous life, never once speaking publicly about what he had done during those frantic weeks in Lithuania. He never complained, never expressed bitterness about being cast aside. He simply moved forward, carrying his extraordinary secret within him. Years later, when people finally started asking questions, when the whispers of his story began to surface, someone asked him why. Why did he risk his career, his family, his very life for complete strangers? His answer was as simple as it was profound. They were human beings, they needed help, that was it. No grand philosophical statement, no talk of legacy, just pure, unadulterated humanity. In his eyes, it was the most natural thing in the world to do. For decades, Sugihara's story remained buried, a forgotten chapter of the war. But the people he saved, the thousands who held those life-saving visas, they never forgot. They grew older, built new lives in new countries, and raised families. But many of them, the children of corners, began to search. They searched for the quiet diplomat, the man who had quite literally written their lives into existence with his own hand, day after day, until his fingers ached and the ink ran dry. Slowly, piece by piece, the truth began to surface. Survivors shared their stories. Historians started digging. The puzzle came together, revealing the full scope of Sugihara's incredible bravery. The world was finally learning about the man who chose people over protocol. In the 1980s, the official recognition finally came. Israel's Holocaust Memorial, Yad Vashem, officially recognized Chiune Sugihara as righteous among the nations. This is one of the highest honors given to non-Jews who risked their lives to save Jews during the Holocaust. He was finally honored not as a diplomat who broke the rules, but as a human being who followed his conscience. When he eventually stood among the survivors and their children, a living forest of the lives he had saved, he didn't puff out his chest with pride. He didn't smile for the cameras. He simply bowed his head in humility. He insisted that he had done nothing special, that anyone would have done the same. But history disagreed. The thousands of lives saved, and the tens of thousands of descendants who exist today because of him, are a powerful testament to the fact that what he did was anything but ordinary. It was extraordinary. Chiune Sugihara's story is a timeless reminder that one person's courage, guided by compassion, can change the course of history, one small act at a time. It proves that you don't need a title or permission to do what is right. You just need to see the humanity in others. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please consider sharing it so more people can learn about this incredible hero. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that deserve to be told. Let's talk about a man you've probably never heard of, but whose actions might just redefine your idea of a hero. His name was Chiune Sugihara. He wasn't a general, a politician, or a celebrity. He was a diplomat, a man who worked at a desk. But what he did at that desk, with just a pen and a piece of paper, is a story that echoes through generations. The year is 1940. The world is on the brink of chaos. Sugihara is the Japanese consul in Kaunas, Lithuania. One morning, he wakes up to a crowd of hundreds, then thousands, of Jewish refugees gathered outside his consulate. They are fleeing the horrors unfolding across Europe, desperate for a way out. Their only hope is a transit visa through Japan, a document that would allow them to escape to safety. There was just one problem. Sugihara's government in Tokyo had strictly forbidden him from issuing these visas. The rules were clear. He was to turn these people away. He sent multiple requests to his superiors, pleading their case. Each time, the answer was a firm no, no exceptions. He was faced with an impossible choice: obey his orders and condemn these people to an almost certain death, or defy his government, risk his career, his family's safety, and do what he knew was right. Imagine that moment. The weight of all those lives hanging on your decision, the fear, the uncertainty. It would have been so easy to just follow the rules, to close the curtains and tell himself it wasn't his problem. But Sugihara couldn't do it. For 3 nights, he and his wife Yukiko barely slept, wrestling with the decision. Finally, he turned to her and said, "I have to do this. I may have to disobey my government, but if I don't, I will be disobeying God." So, he began to write. For 29 days, from morning until late at night, Sugihara and his wife sat at his desk, handwriting visa after visa. His hand ached, his eyes burned, but he didn't stop. He knew he was racing against time. He simplified the visa process, ignoring requirements he knew the refugees couldn't meet. He just wrote, as fast as he could, stamping each paper with the official seal of the Japanese Empire. The line of people outside never seemed to get shorter. He was writing for their lives. Even when he was ordered to leave Lithuania as the consulate was closing down, he continued. As his train prepared to pull away from the station, refugees were still running alongside, hoping for one last chance. Sugihara was literally throwing visas out the window of the moving train, frantically signing and stamping blank pieces of paper, anything to save one more person. The last thing people on the platform saw was him mouthing, "Forgive me, I cannot write anymore." He had done everything he possibly could. After the war, Sugihara was dismissed from the diplomatic service. He lived a quiet, humble life, never speaking of what he had done. He worked various odd jobs to support his family, his heroism completely unknown to the world. It wasn't until 1968, almost 30 years later, that one of the people he had saved, now an Israeli diplomat, finally managed to track him down. The world began to learn the story of Senpo Sugihara, the name many of the survivors remembered him by. Chiune Sugihara passed away in 1986. He never knew the true scale of his impact. Today, it's estimated that over 100,000 people are alive because of him, the children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of the 6,000 souls he saved with his pen. They are doctors, artists, teachers, parents, an entire forest of life grown from the seeds of his courage, all because one man, at a desk, chose his conscience over his career. His story isn't just about history, it's a timeless lesson for all of us. We all face our own Sugihara moments, maybe not on such a grand scale, but moments where it's easier to look away, to follow the rules, to stay quiet. Moments where doing the right thing is hard. Sugihara reminds us that you don't need to be powerful or famous to change the world. Sometimes, all it takes is a single act of courage, a refusal to be indifferent. History isn't just shaped by armies and leaders, it's shaped by ordinary people who choose to do extraordinary things. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please consider sharing it. The world needs more stories like Chiune Sugihara's, and don't forget to subscribe for more hidden histories that deserve to be told.